Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today for our discussion on connecting cars, realizing the benefits of V2X. I am Hillary Kane, Vice President of Technology, Innovation, and Mobility Policy here at the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. So this discussion is the second in a series focused on V2X. Last July, we aired the first part of the discussion, featuring a number of federal and state policymakers. Today, we will hear from representatives from innovative companies leading the way on V2X technology and gain a better understanding of where the technology is in its development and what more needs to happen to realize its full potential in the United States. But before we jump into our industry discussion, we thought it was important to spend at least a few moments checking in on the policy landscape. And so we've asked two government leaders to join us at the top of the program to highlight some key V2X policy developments. First up, we've got Dr. Robert Hampshire, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Dr. Hampshire joined our discussion last July and shared the department's ambitious plans on V2X, including a summit to begin charting a successful path forward on V2X deployment. Now, the department has been quite busy over the last year on V2X on its own and in coordination with other agencies across the federal government. And so we are thrilled, Dr. Hampshire, that you could join us again and are very eager to hear about what the department has been up to. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Hampshire.
Well, thank you, Hillary, and thank you everyone for being here. This session is a follow-up, as you mentioned, to last summer's V2X webinar. My name is Robert Hampshire, as you mentioned, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology, and also the Chief Science Officer here at USDOT. I'm here to offer, a very brief update on the activities since last year's webinar and give you a bit of a precursor to what's to come. But there's been quite a bit of movement and activity that really excited to share with you today. So in the immediate wake of last year's webinar, the department kicked off a new interoperability connectivity program, that really kicked into gear and that led to a number of V2X summits. So the first V2X summit was in August of last year at DOT headquarters. We had more than 600 people in attendance and also virtual attendees. And that led to, fostering new relationships and collaboration, particularly with the Federal Communications Commission and NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, together with DOT. So that effort led to the FCC approval of a joint waiver request for CV2X technology deployment. At that time, that was for 14 automakers and equipment manufacturers. There have been others that waivers have been granted since then, and even more, they're going to come through the pipeline here soon. The waiver approvals, further the path for maximizing what we call interoperable V2X technologies, particularly to help save lives, improve access, equity to transportation systems, and reduce the environmental impacts of transportation. So this progress and working partnership with you all, our transportation stakeholders, inspired the USDOT to further collaborate with more stakeholders to lead to the development of a new vision and comprehensive plan for interoperable nationwide deployments. And, a few days after the joint waiver in April was announced, we held our second national summit down in Texas. It focused on developing that plan. We're calling it the National Interoperable Connectivity Deployment Plan. And also during that second summit, we announced several new grant programs, tools, resources, and opportunities that opened up because of the president's bipartisan infrastructure law. So those things included the SMART Grants program, Attain program, for example, and both of those programs directly funded and focused on connected vehicle technologies. In addition, we continue to work on the technology and testing. So our teams at DOT have worked with vendors, many of you here today, to do joint testing, to further test and mature the technology. And in fact, some of the issues that we worked on during those testing have now become have become addressed and incorporated into the way vendors are operating. So the USDOT, we're going to continue to support motivated organizations and partners to innovate, while we're demonstrating the benefits of this interoperable V2X deployment approach. But of course, that was after the second summit, but we're not stopping there, because stay tuned. We're going to announce a third national summit. We want to continue this forward momentum, as well as continuing to strengthen the partnerships, at the state, local, and with our private sector partners. So definitely look out for that announcement for a third summit coming here in the fall, relatively soon. So I want to reiterate, that we remain completely dedicated to accelerating the adoption of interoperable connectivity. And that's nationwide, not just in one pilot here or there, but nationwide deployment. We continue to envision V2X as a transformational technology that will make a significant impact in our transportation landscape, particularly around safety. And so we're committed to helping establish that path forward with our nationwide interoperable plan, and particularly working with stakeholders like you all. So together with, connected and automated vehicles, V2X certainly have the potential, to unlock otherwise unachievable safety benefits and mobility benefits. But honestly, we all won't get there to see this potential of this moment unless we all get there together. And so I'm here to say we're committed to engage with all of you as key stakeholders here to help us get there. So I want us to continue to make progress. Last year at the summit, we made some promises that we're going to move forward. We'll work with you to get the waivers. We'll work to get deployments. And we started to keep those commitments, as you've seen over the last year. And so we want to continue to build on this fantastic progress. And so I look forward to continued engagement as we move forward for the nationwide deployments for V2X. So with that, have a great rest of the session. And Hillary, I'll turn it back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Hampshire, for your efforts and for the efforts of all of your colleagues at the department and across the federal government who are making V2X a priority. And we're very grateful to you and for your work, and look forward to continued collaboration going forward. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
And now we are going to hear from someone on the front line of this issue at the state level, Kathy McGee, our Chief Deputy Commissioner at the Virginia Department of Transportation. Now, Virginia was one of the 2 states, along with a number of automakers and automotive suppliers, that submitted that joint waiver request to the Federal Communications Commission back in late 2021 that Dr. Hampshire referenced. Seeking permission to deploy cellular V2X or CV2X in the 5.9 gigahertz band. We're, I think, all thrilled that the commission approved that waiver request in April of this year. But Chief Deputy Commissioner McGee, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to see if you could tell us a bit about what Virginia has been up to in this space, and mainly, also what the waiver means for your work going forward.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this discussion today. As I think everyone knows, VDOT's been in this space for a long time. We developed one of the first open road test beds for connected vehicle applications, starting with DSRC, and then with our partners moving to CV2X. We really do believe in the potential for CV2X over the long term. We made those investments early on because we felt it was really important to learn about the capabilities of the technology, what those benefits could be back to an agency like VDOT. And of course, a better understanding of what it was going to cost to do our side of the deployment. But we also feel and remain committed to staying engaged to make sure that our workforce is ready and has the skills needed to help us as we begin to deploy on a wider scale these technologies. And then, of course, to understand what it will mean to have all of these connected vehicles in our network. It's frustrating. I will just say that right up front, to be where we are today after so much investment, not just of money, but of energy and other resources. We've been fairly limited in what we've been able to do. Performance evaluations, small scale demonstrations, what I tend to call one-offs. We keep waiting for the day where we have that large scale deployment and we can really, really begin to quantify benefits on a larger scale. But we've had successes along the way. I would say we've got partners here that you'll be hearing from in a little bit that helped us do a demonstration of C-V2X on US Route 50 in Northern Virginia, supporting SPAT and MAP broadcasts to enable red light violation warning and green light optimized speed advisories and some work zone information sharing. And we felt like that was a really powerful demonstration. At the same time, we're working on our end of things, looking at ways to build the data that we can share through a connected environment. We've developed with our partners at Virginia Tech Transportation Institute what we call the Work Zone Builder, which helps us to collect work zone information, very detailed information that we can then send out in real time to help us have safer environments within our work zones, applications that help keep the workers in those work zones safer, and then obviously ways that we can just share the information that we have within our agency out through a connected vehicle environment. As I mentioned, we did have that partnership with Qualcomm and Audi and VTTI and others to really look at what C-V2X could mean in our own local environment. And I think it was really successful, and it helped us look at a number of questions. And so then when we had all of the issues with, well, maybe we can't deploy further, that really was frustrating for us. And we still face quite a few challenges, obviously, reallocation of the safety spectrum, phase out of DSRC. All of that means that there's still uncertainty, and uncertainty makes things really difficult, especially for an agency, a state agency like VDOT or any other state DOT, where we're making long-term investments and we're just not sure which way things are going to go at the end of the day. But we need to work together to find those use cases that are achievable in the near term, that don't require really large penetration rates, so that we can begin to build that story, that use case benefit information that will help us get to that larger deployment. We have to remain focused on return on investment. And at the same time, we really need to think about how we get to the point that Dr. Hampshire was talking about, this commonly accepted, universally accepted architecture roadmaps, how we get to the point where we're all working together on the same page. We obviously, again, we joined the application for the waiver because we do believe that there are tremendous safety benefits in connected vehicle technologies. We want to continue to be in this space. We want to continue to lead in this space. And there's lots of work still to be done to understand what the implications of spectrum reallocation is. What are we going to see in terms of bandwidth congestion or interference? How reliable is the system going to be, and what does that mean for the use cases that are the highest priority for us? And then again, how will all of this work during this period of time where we have a mixed fleet of equipped and non-equipped vehicles? Lots of opportunity. It's always nice to follow challenges with opportunities. So there's still lots of opportunities out there. We're seeing production vehicles, many of them already including the 4G, 5G modem. So there's tremendous opportunity to work with that. Telecoms, looking to provide additional data and capability via telematics that maybe overlap with what we've been trying to do. And then obviously edge computing capabilities are huge and could really help us with some of those other challenges we already talked about. So when we think about where we go next, there's some questions that probably are on everyone's mind. One of the big ones for me is what are the OEMs going to do? And are they willing to embrace this idea of connected and automated vehicles as opposed to just the automation side of things? And will that be universal, or will we still, we know we have some partners, but how interoperable will the whole thing be at the end of the day? Telecoms are going to have to be the bridge there to help us get to where we want to go. I really think that's true. And from my perspective, from a DOT perspective, we got to get comfortable knowing that we're not controlling all of the data and information that's out there, that we're going to have to rely on our third-party partners in that. And that's a tough one for a lot of DOTs, but I think we can get there. And then obviously one of the things that we've talked a lot about in our demonstration that we did with folks on this call is that business case. How do we fund all this going forward, and how do we make sure it has long-term sustainability? So we're going to keep looking for opportunities to expand our deployment, but expand it in ways that really support dedicated use cases. We went out early years and years ago and just put out technology in the field and said, we'll see what comes. We're being much more thoughtful about it now as things have progressed or not over the years. And so we're being more thoughtful in our deployments and in terms of what use cases can be supported and what the future looks like, at least in the near term. But we do want to support demonstrations in part with our partners. We want to continue to see where we can go with all of this, looking obviously towards a future where things are interoperable and we can support those more widespread deployments. So we remain optimistic, perhaps more cautiously optimistic than we were 15 years ago. But again, we believe in the benefits of C-V2X and really hope that we see some big steps forward in the year to come. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chief Deputy Commissioner McGee. We are incredibly excited about what is to come in Virginia and really appreciate your continued leadership. So thank you so much. Now, with the backdrop of those important policy updates, I want to welcome our industry panel. So joining me for the remainder of our program are Suman Sarah, Vice President of Product and Innovation in Harman's Automotive Business Unit, Jim Meisner, Global V2X Ecosystem Lead for Qualcomm, Paul Malhotra, Senior Director for Connected Services at Audi of America, and Ajay Rane, Global Head of IoT Strategy and Business Development at Amazon Web Services. Thank you to each of you for being here today for this important conversation, and then let's go ahead and dive right in. I thought to get started, it might make sense for us to take a step back and level set amongst ourselves, at least, on what we are actually here talking about today. So for you and for your company, what is V2X? Suman, if you don't mind, let's start with you on this one.
Sure, thank you. Greetings, everyone. So V2X, or commonly known as Vehicle to Everything, is a technology that connects vehicles to the world, sharing vital information and alerting drivers and other road users of potential hazards. It is truly a life-altering technology, allowing you and I, as a driver, to be aware of aspects that are taking place on the road, around you, and that you're not able to see yet, so non-line of sight. And this is also important because there may be sensors that your vehicle is equipped with, such as front-facing cameras, radars, that are not yet able to catch any impending dangers. It is an essential enabler for us to see how this would help and enable boost autonomous and connected driving to its full potential. V2X also opens up enormous opportunities to expand in-vehicle experiences. Here at Harman, we're looking at V2X as a way to provide better connectivity, more situational awareness, and different benefits that go into more immersive user experiences. There are two different modes that you'll likely hear from the rest of the esteemed colleagues here. V2X in the context that we are discussing is the short-range communication for say up to a mile for various road actors. Now, be it between vehicle to vehicle or V2V, or with different roadside infrastructure elements such as traffic light controllers, parking facilities, and so on, which is V2I. So for Harman, as a primary automotive tier 1 supplier, providing products and solutions to the automotive, we have V2X stack, V2X products and solutions that are truly aimed at bringing the automotive side as well as the infrastructure side together. And we believe this is unique, and our understanding of those two really is required to bring an end-to-end system together.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Does that sound right to everybody else? Pom, Jim, Ajay, is there anything that you want to add?
I can add something.
Yeah, please.
And thank you, Suman, for setting the stage so nicely and a comprehensive definition of V2X and to differentiate what V2X is with short range versus the rest of the V2X, everything. And so I index very heavily on the short range, and we all should, because what does V2X mean to me personally and to Qualcomm and hopefully to the traveling public at large is that it means safety. And I started working on V2X when Rodney Slater first said that safety is our North Star. So that would put us in the late 90s or early 2000s. And it's still our North Star, but V2X is a high-tech way to get to that North Star. And that North Star again being safety. So that's what V2X means, is the layer above and beyond what the other types of important connected services are, with special focus on again and again the safety aspect.
Thank you, Pom. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, maybe I can bring a little bit of the automaker perspective into this as well. First of all, thank you for being here and excellent points, Suman and Jim. I think from our perspective, if you look at the history of safety and its implementation through technology in the automotive industry, we've seen a couple of different phases. Passive safety being the first, where you're basically focused on how do you protect occupants when a crash happens, and whether that's through airbags or seatbelts. That was the first game in town. And of course, it was an exemplary way to improve outcomes in those types of situations on the road. And it directly led over time as technology progressed to what we call active safety, which is where you can actually start looking at how do you prevent these situations on the road by monitoring what's going on around the vehicle through sensors that are built into the vehicle. And that era has continued for a while, with vehicles being able to manage situations in a way where if a impending collision is imminent or a situation is arising that could create a cause for concern, the vehicle can be controlled in a certain manner. There are, however, significant blind spots that happen when there is no line of sight necessarily or direct way to see the oncoming issues. And unfortunately, those types of situations occur on the road too often, whether it's through work zones, as Kathy was mentioning, or through school zones with children getting on or off buses, or with bicyclists, which are present in ever more numbers on roads these days, or even with emergency vehicles and other types of road users. The statistics over the last 2 decades have not been very encouraging. And as we've seen occupant safety levels increase over time, the numbers on the road user side, on the outside of the vehicle, have not progressed, and in many cases have gone in the wrong direction. And so what we think is that the only way that technology can now take us to a point where we start impacting those numbers in a more favorable way is through collaboration. And that means that you need to have that communication happening among vehicles on the road, but also between vehicles and infrastructure and other road users. And as that happens, the instantaneous nature of that communication, along with the simplistic messaging that comes with it in terms of who I am, what I am, where I'm going, and whether or not I'm going to make a maneuver that might come in your way. That level of information, when it's relayed 10 times a second on broadcast around you, to listening ears can result in an impact that reduces the chances of a collision on the road. And this is what we've been doing. So as with Audi, we've been in the V2X game for some time. We've been using technology that leverages cellular networks for some time. This is a different game. This is now direct communications, where you're talking about not necessarily being dependent on this infrastructure or the round trip, but being able to communicate directly. And as a result, you take away a lot of that latency, which can come in the way. A lot of times drivers are in situations where they're either not aware or they're not able to see the danger on the road. And that can happen with other road users as well. And you only have a split second to avoid an unfortunate instance. That's where this communication technology comes in. And we think that this is really the way in which we're going to make the next big substantial improvements in road safety. So V2X for us, specifically cellular V2X technology, is the game in town. We think is what everybody needs to invest in.
Thank you for that. Jay, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Absolutely. So Suman, Jim, and Pom, thanks for that background. I think you captured the essence of V2X technology and what it can achieve. What I'd like to highlight is one other consequence of that data coming in, whether it's V2V or V2I. There are new concerns that will come out of this technology, especially as it relates to privacy and also authentication and verification of the data, so that we prevent rogue actors at these intersections or wherever we're collecting this data. So in a homogeneous ecosystem where you are communicating between the same models of cars, yes, there will be additional level of security. But once you open it up to a heterogeneous environment where you have multiple vendors communicating over a reference standard or an architecture that is common, it also opens up other challenges or opens us up to other challenges where you may have rogue actors trying to participate in that and create some unintended consequences and malicious actions. And so we should also, when we look at how we're developing the technology, we need to look at PII authentication, as well as just in general policy around that. For example, when you go to Europe, how does this comply with GDPR and other standards? So that's another area that needs to be addressed as we look at V2X technology evolution.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So I heard a lot of you talk about safety just now, and I want to make sure we also hit on maybe some of the other benefits. So besides safety, are there other benefits that we think V2X technology will bring to the traveling public? And Jim, if you don't mind, maybe I'll start with you on this one.
It's hard to list 2 and 3 when safety is so important. But let me start by listing 2 or 3. They're all adjuncts. First of all, it is safety in a privacy-preserving manner to address the concern that we as a community have been thinking about this for on the order of 20 plus years and thinking about how one would authenticate but still preserve the anonymity of the other actor. And so you need to trust someone if they're going to say they're going to crash against you. I completely get it. So there's a community. So but let's go off of that. Safety and trust, that's fundamental. What does that mean to you as a personal traveler? That means you can go around the intersection and again, maneuver that with confidence. But from that builds up, predicted travel times. There's an element of equity here and a very important one, because as you travel, as you interact with pedestrians, those road actors who may or may not have high-tech equipment would have an additional, almost ecumenical type of communication network to help them out, direct communication to aid you there. There's a matter of convenience, because there's nothing like an incident that would cause an inconvenience. So all these things are consequences of a safe trip. So certainly as a traveling public, you may not care about what technology is in there. It's pretty cool technology. What you care about is that it facilitates a trip that you want to make, that your loved ones want to make, and that other person wants to make, so you don't encounter anything except for pleasant cooperation.
Thank you for that. Is anyone else have anything that they wanted to add of other benefits? I think Jim covered quite a few of them. Okay, so great. So the one thing I note though, right, there's quite a bit of effort underway on a host of other technologies and approaches that can improve roadway safety, improve the efficiency of roadways, address equity. So how is V2X technology different, right? In other words, what if anything is unique here about the technology we're talking about today? And Pom, maybe you can get us started on this one.
Yes, thank you. This is an area that's been of interest to me for some time, and I've had the opportunity to observe and also contribute to the growth of connectivity in vehicles, but also specifically on the V2X side. And it's given me a perspective that actually helps understand where things can be effective for what types of application. I think this is important as a background to your question. Just to give you a little bit of a flavor for this, we at Audi, we introduced V2X technology for the first time in our portfolio in 2016. And this was leveraging 4G technology through LTE networks, basically allowing the connectivity that has been rolled out by cities throughout the country to control their traffic lights, and through the cloud be able to have information about when a traffic light is likely to turn green, channeled to the driver. This was interesting because it provided a way to look at how do you give the driver more information than they would otherwise have, and what does that actually do? And the observable benefits of doing that is, it is definitely adding to the level of comfort that somebody feels while driving, because if you know that your vehicle is telling you that a light is going to turn red by the time you get to that intersection, your behavior changes. You normally take your foot off the wheel and coast in and come to a slow stop, versus trying to make am I dashing through this intersection or coming to a screeching halt decision when you see the amber light. And that is an interesting behavior, because the only difference between the normal scenario and this scenario is that one countdown that shows up in your vehicle dashboard telling you how long before that light turns red. It has, of course, other benefits. You can see through trucks standing in your way where you won't be able to see a traffic light. And so it gives you time to be prepared. It lets you sit at intersections knowing how much time you will have to be there. All of those added up to an overall value that connecting cars to smart infrastructure makes a lot of sense. But that one particular observation that you can actually change behavior became a key notable for us as we started looking at how do we impact safety. As we look at those types of applications that we did through the cellular networks, most of our benefits there are towards comfort and convenience and creating a more pleasurable drive. But when you start looking at how do you actually prevent accidents and create a higher level of safety on the road, especially when you look at vulnerable road users, V2X and the types of technologies that are being discussed in this panel is really the way to go. And there are some very specific peculiarities about how this is designed. It has been built taking advantage of all the learnings of communication technology over the years. And so it has that 30-year benefit of having evolved to the state of art that cellular technology has today. It has the benefit of being available in automotive applications and automotive chipsets, which for an OEM is important, because when we start looking at adding new technology to cars, the price differential is important. And the way it's been developed, you can do this by adding a very small price component to the vehicle. Thirdly, it is a very low latency communication because it bypasses the infrastructure. And as a result of that, you can communicate messaging 10 times a second, which is more than you can do ever through a network. And so that is something that becomes a clear benefit. If you're in a lane and making a turn and there's a bicyclist coming on your side that you just have not seen, you usually have a very fractional amount of a second to react to that. And a lot of times when incidents happen, the exact words coming out of the driver's mouth is, "I just didn't see the bicyclist," or "I just didn't see the pedestrian." And these are the types of issues that we want to avoid by giving the driver the awareness of what's going on around them, and by showing them in their dashboards a warning, or at least some kind of an icon that says, "Be careful, there's somebody around you." Of course, this can lead to a next generation view, which is then you start looking at how do you react if the driver is not reacting. And this leads us towards a roadmap of autonomous mobility, which we think is where this ultimately goes. So in order to get to that point, though, right now we think that starting with vulnerable road user safety applications is the first application that we would focus on, and of course, CV2X technology brings all the right characteristics to enable that to happen.
Great, thank you for that. Ajay, I see you've got maybe you've something you wanted to add here.
Absolutely. So I agree with what Palm said. I think that awareness is critical in terms of preventing accidents and also overall enhancing safety while you're driving. And the question you asked originally, Hillary, was what is unique about this technology? And I believe the uniqueness of CV2X and V2X in general lies in its challenges, right? In its current fragmented state, where you have a host of different entities, whether it's vehicles on the road, pedestrians, and the infrastructure, with a lot of data that is coming in. And then within each of them also, every vehicle does not have the same level of capabilities in terms of hardware and compute and sensor capabilities. And the uniqueness, I believe, for CV2X technology is the ability now to democratize the data that is being generated by all the actors that are at that intersection and bringing it together through sensor fusion and other technologies, and then sending it and sharing that data across all the vehicles and pedestrians that are at the intersection. That is truly showing the value of this technology, because while someone may not be able to afford a car with the latest and greatest sensors, safety, the cost of the human life, cannot be measured in terms of the value of your car or the infrastructure or the phone that you're carrying. And what CV2X does, it has the potential now to be able to offer the same data set to save lives, regardless of what hardware you have. And I believe that is the uniqueness of this technology, which lies in solving the challenges that come with it.
That's great. Thank you so much. And maybe, Ajay, if you don't mind, I actually want to stick with you to start this next question, because I'm interested in our audience understanding sort of the role that each of your companies plays in this ecosystem. So Ajay, what is AWS doing when it comes to V2X? What is your role in all of this?
So thanks, Hillary. So from an AWS perspective, the way we look at CV2X and our value that we bring to the business and to the industry is, first of all, making sure that we work with our automotive customers to enable some of the technologies that are going into the cars, as well as working with our cellular customers, the communication service providers who have the networks that enable some of these technologies, and being able to provide the undifferentiated heavy lifting in the back end, which will enable some of these technologies to run efficiently and bring this technology to market in a manner that it's available to everyone. And to that end, for example, one of the key elements that we look at is how do you secure the integrity of the messages that are being generated using mobile edge compute? And then beyond that, making sure that our customers and whoever is participating in the CV2X infrastructure and at the intersection have the right set of cloud compute technologies available, not just from a compute and storage perspective, but also with the right level of latency. So depending on what the workload looks like, where does it need to run? Does it need to run inside the car or at the far edge where we have mobile edge compute capabilities? Or maybe there are some things that require higher level of compute and that those need to be run in the region. So working with our CSP, our communication service provider partners, the automakers, as well as the ISVs, the independent software vendors, to give them access to the right infrastructure where they need it, and to enable CV2X to and accelerate the pace of adoption of CV2X. that is where we see our role, partnering with all the, or working together with all of the partners that we work with, and then helping bring this technology to the market.
Great. Suman, I see maybe you've got something to add. So what's Harman's role in all of this?
No, I think it's fantastic because we have a very diverse set of panelists representing different personas in the value chain. And this is something, I'm really excited to see that diversity. Harman Automotive in general, it's a tier one, automotive tier one, and we work with everyone that is represented here in terms of our products and solutions that we target for the automotive industry, right? Now, a couple of years ago, Harman also acquired a company, which is a thought leader as well as a tech leader in V2X space called Savari. As a result, under the same roof, what Harman is able to offer is truly an end-to-end perspective, which is something I shared during your first question. I think that the unique advantage that we believe we have in understanding the true needs of our automakers, relevant to when we talk to DOTs, when we talk to understand the pain points from a transportation agency and authority, we are able to bring those pain points and understand the unmet needs, and then channel our products to truly see, okay, what is it that the customer is looking to go and solve today versus some things that may be pain points today, but may not be severe enough that need to be addressed right away. So having that harmonization of where is the industry, what is the go-to-market, and bringing the pieces together from both the automotive side as well as the infrastructure side, that is where we are operating.
Fantastic. Jim, what is Qualcomm's role in all of this?
Well, we view ourselves, particularly in the automotive business unit, as the technology partner to the automotive industry. That would include a technology partnership with Harman, and would include technology partnership now that we're talking about V2X with the necessary component, which is the road infrastructure owner-operator. I just make note that 250 million cars have Qualcomm modems inside. We're very clear-eyed about what the modem produces. We're very clear-eyed. We're innovators with V2X about what that produces. And in our partnerships, we work very closely to make sure that that holistic point of view is observed, practiced. All those technology challenges are overcome. We are here to make V2X happen.
Thank you for that. Suman, I'm actually gonna go to Pom. I see you would like to answer that. It's sort of to me like obvious what the role of the car is in all this, but certainly you should articulate, please, Pom.
Thank you. Yeah, no, like you said, I think the automaker being the one that the customer is closest to, we have a role to play. And I think we are also best positioned to bring this ecosystem together. And that's what we have been doing at Audi. At least we've been encouraging working both internally as well as with partners like Qualcomm and with VTTI and VDOT and others to really try to pull this together and to really show the value that technologies like these, when implemented in a way that they are simultaneously deployed, can really bring this next level of societal benefit. So sharing that knowledge, working with the regulators to really start pushing this into standards, getting those standards realized sooner. The fact that we have a single standard for the US, we think is a huge win. That all, I think, is part of where OEMs can play a role. For too long, we were fixated on vehicle-to-vehicle services. And the idea was that, well, we can only contain our own space and we don't really have the ability to influence other road users and other road operators. But that is actually not a great way to look at this problem, because if you only focus on the vehicle-to-vehicle safety benefits and what accrues from there, then you really get into the who goes first problem, which is if you don't deploy enough cars on the road, then there really is no benefit. And how long is it going to take to get to that? Versus if you start looking at it from an ecosystem standpoint, and then you see the investments coming in from emergency vehicle manufacturers, from bicycle manufacturers, from road operators, from construction zone equipment operators, and you start seeing the simultaneous deployment happen over the next 5 years, you're talking about a decade in which the level of safety that you can expect on the road is growing by bounds. And we think that this is an important, necessary step if we are to get to this autonomous mobility future.
Yeah, and that's actually a really nice transition to where I wanted to go next, which is on what rollout might look like here. So Suman, I'm interested maybe in starting with you on this one and thinking, how is Harman thinking about how V2X should roll out in the US? What's the best way for us to do this?
I think from my standpoint, some of this was touched earlier, right? V2X is a technology, DSRC or CV2X. This is something that we've all been talking about. 2 decades have gone in perfecting it. But the most recent FCC waiver permitting some of the group of state agencies, automakers, universities, and OEMs to operate these technologies within the 5.9 gigahertz, I think is a watershed moment for our industry, right? No longer we have to contend dealing with 2 protocols. I think that ambiguity as a product owner, do I supply my products that conform to this stack or that stack? That created a lot of confusion, and also the lack of regulation or lack of clarity has been a bit of a challenge. Now, at least we can say this is a step forward for not just the industry, but also for the road users, the city planners, the highway administrators, the independent parties that are involved, who can actually experience the enhanced roadway safety and the traffic or mobility efficiency benefits, which you could only think of when you're really setting up a blueprint of a smart city. Now, to be truly successful, these connected experiences must be thoughtfully translated and engineered. And I think there are 4 key factors. One is for safety, right? Because primarily this is the first day one use case and the promise that we have. The security aspect has been touched by Pom as well as Ajay. Durability of this technology, and then most importantly, what is the general effectiveness here within an automotive environment? So I think having that balanced approach and enabling consumer trust inside and outside the car in fully autonomous vehicles is an incremental process. And I think that starts by building these incredibly connected technology-enabled vehicles and infrastructure pieces together. If you look at the history, right, I think in the US, we've been leading this in the past, I would say a decade ago or so, when in 2011, 2012, US DOT put together CAMP, right, the Crash Avoidance Metrics program. We had 13 large OEMs, US DOT, a lot of different pilots were run, showed the efficacy of the technology. And V2X being a cooperative technology, which means its effectiveness increases as there is more deployment, both in terms of vehicles that are equipped, whether it's through an OBU or the telematics control unit, as well as for the roadside infrastructure. You will see a much more profound impact, like leaps and bounds to what Pom referred earlier. What is different and how we think this would change this time around is, I think the key catalyst this time around is the IIJA or bipartisan infrastructure law, the grants that are coming in, these waivers, and then also the Vision Zero and policies and regulations that are being put in place will truly make this achievable as well as materialize in terms of the different safety aspect or mobility efficiency that we expect to be able to provide. I wouldn't want to worry when my son goes from home to his school on his bicycle, he goes through multiple intersections. I won't have to worry. I shouldn't have to worry whether he's reaching the school, without having to deal with any dangers or speeding drivers. To me, that is the actual state of nirvana that we can drive through these changes in technology, policy, and so on.
Great. I as a mother, I love that. I love that vision. It seems that all of us, on this webinar right now, agree that V2X is going to be life-changing. And so I want to turn now maybe a little bit to the impediments, if any, that exist to bringing this technology to the US. And I thought maybe we could start sort of on the technical or practical side of things. And Jim, I would love to hear your take on this. What, if anything, is standing in the way of us getting this technology into the US market on sort of that technical, practical side of things?
Sure. Nothing is so simple as to be just technical. But so let me just address one somewhat political issue, which is very important because the technical undertones is the joint waiver request was great. We need more of those to be granted, and then we need a final rule. So given that, it's clear sailing among those who want to sail. So to stretch a metaphor even further, to change it, every journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So what is that first step? So I've been wrestling with this with a whole bunch of stakeholders, starting with, a cadre of my really good friends who are the V2X function owners and virtually every OEM, the feature owner, the function owner, whatever. They tell me that, well, we have an idea of a day one, but the infrastructure owner operator has a different idea. So what is day one? So we decided to start working on that. So we have 3 separate day ones. One is from the perspective of the OEM, an important day one because that's mass market. Another is perspective of the infrastructure owner operator. Hey, by the way, with the waivers, that could be a day one that is now. And then there are special day ones. People have these one-off, but maybe not so one-off, interesting use cases, which are disruptive, such as tolling. So let's wrestle what day one looks like and then make those day ones as simple as possible and publicize this. So first start off with an OEM conversation to the rest of the world, but then we all realize it becomes ecumenical, becomes a true dialogue. And we're developing a document. Documents, not the savior, but within that document, both is the socialization and the discussion, but there are also very solid, almost nerdy technical aspects as to what defines day one. So what Robert Hampshire truly says, interoperability, that is achieved. The right standards are profiled. So to me, that's very practical and pragmatic. We're hoping to roll it out sometime in October. We've already had a walkthrough. Hundreds of people have contributed to it. It's not a specific organization, really, frankly, in the end, it's a coalition of the willing.
That is very exciting, a very exciting development. Anyone else want to add anything on the technical or practical challenges? Tom?
Yeah, let me, so Jim brings up a really, really important point about the rules being finalized. This is something that is an impediment at this point until we actually understand how interference is going to affect technologies that are operating in this spectrum. It's difficult for us to make that final determination to deploy and put timing in some firm hold. But it is something that we know that there's a lot of effort happening in the background. I will say that the decision that was made in November 2020 to clarify the standard for the US being CV2X has really helped energize almost every aspect of the transportation ecosystem to start focusing towards one north. There's no more discussion about different technologies. Everybody's focused on the same technology, and that really takes away unnecessary noise in terms of being able to get towards deployment, because it makes the investment a little bit more understandable. It makes it a little bit more deterministic in terms of where it's going. But we also need to make sure that we understand that the investment is large. By some estimates, it's about 6.5 billion over 10 years to get about 75% of the intersections properly equipped with CV2X technology, and this was an ITSA report. So it's not exactly a small problem, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, not at all. So I think we've already talked a little bit during this conversation about how we've all been working on V2X, for years now, but so far, sort of getting to that, mass deployment has sort of evaded us. Does this time, I'm interested, maybe Suman, we can start with you on this one. I'm interested in hearing if you think this time feels different. Do you think that we are finally on track to see this technology deployed in a meaningful way?
I think we touched, it's a great question, and that we also ponder within our own stakeholder community. I think the one main thing is the fact that we have now at least decided that we will put our efforts on the 5.9 gigahertz PC5 CV2X. That really helps, borrowing the words that Pom used, that helps clear the noise, not just for the community, but also for the ecosystem, because OEMs as well as the equipment providers, we have that clarity now. But I think the waiver is the first step, right? You cannot simply leave it at that. I would like us to see if FCC can actually finalize CV2X rulemaking and provide a clear path forward for the industry. What that means is when we are looking at the critical safety systems, how will they benefit the drivers and the VRUs, the vulnerable road users across the US? I think Dr. Robert Hemshire actually touched on it, right? We're not talking about pockets of DOTs, but we're talking about how do we enable this national plan. The national policy on this should really provide the certainty, the path forward, and how do we scale these smart infrastructure investments. There are a couple of things I think is different this time. I think funding and the budgeting of having the clarity that we need to set an impetus on how do we get the infrastructure ready for this, right? And as a DOT person, one would also think, am I putting and investing in future-proof technology? Is my technology future-proof? So with this, I think this time it's different. In terms of technology stack being understood, I think that is fine. But then there are also parts that we would like to see the vehicles also in embrace more of this. Now that can happen or start with DOTs or the city authorities looking at their own fleets, right? If you think about their own fleets, that may be the first starting point before we see the mass scale that comes through our consumer automotive, and as well as the engagement within the ecosystem. I think all of us have touched some part of this public-private collaboration, but this application stack going beyond day one, looking at the level of autonomy that we aspire to achieve. What is it that the applications need to take advantage of this broadcast protocol, right? And then solving for these problems, maybe starting small, moving fast, iterating, learning from it, and then making that blueprint that gets rolled out in partnership with industry and from the government side. I think with clear policies on data structure, data privacy, the governance around it, I think those are some of the things that at least I'm now starting to see through the national deployment plan.
Great. Is that Jim or Ajay or Pam? Anyone else want to weigh in on this one?
Sure, I can go. So I agree with Suman. This does feel different this time, and also alluding to Pam's comments earlier, the clarity that the ruling, the waiver brought in, I think, is refreshing, and because of that, a lot of investments have gone in. We believe that additional work needs to be done around, clarifying those policies and making a policy decision, and also enabling industry collaboration. But one other area where we feel there is additional work that needs to be done is to establish a clear business model to enable monetization across each entity that is involved in the CV2X business. And one of the things to look at perhaps is look at the past and how the government enabled GPS technology, global positioning technology, which is right now free to all end users, to all consumers, but it's funded through a government initiative. And perhaps we need to bring that type of thinking into how do we enable monetization around CV2X technologies for all the players in the market. That's another area where I feel will help accelerate the adoption and the investment across the industry, and also help clarify for all the state DOTs how this infrastructure investment is going to come in, and how does everyone monetize, or the businesses can monetize this technology.
It's an interesting idea. Jim, I see maybe you've got something to add here.
So I have a friendly amendment. And certainly we all need motivations, but I point out that the public sector, monetizing is not necessarily the goal, but to find out what the benefits are great. What I was going to focus on, though, was getting to the starting line. What Jay talked about was how do you run the whole race? And I completely get that. Getting to the starting line, this is what feels different because of the unprecedented, ubiquitous just support from all sectors, from the political, both sides of the aisle, from various associations, from individual companies. This is what feels different. US DOT's leadership feels different. And so there is certainly a resolve and a larger coalition to get to the starting line. Again, and just to close, certainly one needs to figure out, once you get to the starting line, how do you run the whole race? And there it comes that everyone has to have value to get to be derived from their participation. And so I completely get that certain businesses need to have that, but we have to be very cognizant that that's an imperative for the public sector to show transportation benefits, and many of those go back to safety.
Thank you for that, Jim. Palm?
Yes, just a quick, I think it's refreshing, as Jim says, to see the US DOT, engaging in the way that they are. And I think that it would be good to see continued leadership to try to build out this national roadmap strategy for V2X. I think that would be something that would provide even more clarity. And I would also encourage NHTSA to really start engaging in a stronger way, to start looking at this as an opportunity to address the vulnerable road user fatalities problem.
You're great. Thank you for that. So unfortunately, our time together is quickly coming to an end, but to wrap things up, I thought it might be fun to have a brief lightning round for our final 3 questions. So for each of these, we'll just go around the horn and everyone will respond very quickly. So first question, as we sit here today, are you feeling more, less, or equally excited about V2X than you have in the past? Suman?
More.
Palm?
More.
Jim?
Very much more.
Ajay?
Absolutely, more excited.
Okay, so let's pretend for a second that it is 10 years from now, and we have reconvened as a panel. And by the way, you all look great. You haven't aged a day. Have the impediments and obstacles that we discussed back in 2023 been resolved? Is V2X now being deployed at scale in the US? Ajay, yes or no?
Yes, I'm very optimistic, especially if I look the same in 10 years.
Right. Jim?
Yes, I hope to look the same in 10 years as well, but certainly we would expect V2X to be deployed at scale.
And Palm?
Well, I'm not going to hold out hope for looking the same in 10 years, but I think the societal benefits will certainly be realized by that time.
All right, and Suman?
Affirmative. Yes.
All right, last question. In just a couple of words, maybe 3, if I'm being generous, complete this sentence for me. The greatest impact of V2X technology will be blank. Jim?
Saved lives.
Ajay?
Save lives, yes.
Suman?
Safe, equitable, and sustainable transportation.
I love it. Palm?
Create safer autonomous mobility.
Fantastic. Well, this has been an absolutely wonderful discussion. I want to thank each of you for being here today, for your expertise, for your essential work on this transformative technology, and for your clear commitment to making our transportation future cleaner, safer, and smarter. So thank you so much. And thank you again to Dr. Hampshire and Chief Deputy Commissioner McGee for their earlier policy updates. And finally, thank you to the audience for joining us for this conversation and for your interest in this important topic. And to learn more about the Alliance for Automotive Innovation's work on V2X, including our V2X policy agenda, and to watch the first webinar in this V2X series, please visit our website at autosinnovate.org/V2X. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.